Welcome to the Dive In. I am your host, Kathleen, and I have my friend Bailey joining us today. And we're going to be talking about the Fallout TV show. I'm very excited about this one. I binge watched it this entire week, and I thought it was great. And I brought Bailey on because I know that she has played the Fallout 4 game. So I'm going to bring in her professional insight into this one.
I will know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Yeah, so if you guys don't know, Fallout is a TV show that's based on the game of the same name, and it was released on Prime Video on April 10th. I believe all 8 episodes dropped at once, and it follows pretty much just three main characters, and a couple, we get glimpses into a couple other side characters as well along the way. So we have Lucy McLean, played by Ella Purnell. Cooper Howard, who we find out pretty quickly that he's also the ghoul, is played by Colton Goggins. And then we also have Maximus, who's played by Aaron Clifton Motton. All right, so let's dive in. Let's talk about the first episode. And I think that's the one that I have the most notes on, just because it was like the episode that drew us all in, got us started on all the on the characters. We pretty much start um before the war, like in I believe it was 2077. And we are following Cooper Howard. And he's dressed as his Western character at a kid's birthday party. He seems to be a little bit down on his luck. And it gets apparent pretty quickly that there's high tensions about the bombings. Like even the weatherman is being stressed about telling the weather because he's like, I don't know if there's gonna be a next week. Why would I tell the weather? And all these kids are sitting around watching this, which is just a whole other thing. Like that's the last thing kids need to be thinking about is, oh, what is it like? What's tomorrow gonna look like? And even Cooper's kid asks him like, oh, like asking him about the bombs dropping, and he shows him the whole thing about the thumbs up with the if it's bigger than if the cloud is bigger than your thumb, then you need to run. Something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Or like as long as it's not bigger than your thumb, like you're in the clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, One thing about that opening scene I found interesting was there's just this little line where they're like, the president has been missing, or like no one knows where the president is.
Yeah.
So, and that's in like the first 2 minutes of the show.
Yeah.
So it really like already you're kind of like, well, what's going on? Or it's like hinting that something big is going to happen. Where if you aren't familiar with the show or the game, it really like sucks you in.
Yeah, which I actually missed that line. And so when I was going back through and doing my notes, they were like, oh yeah, they said on the TV that like the president's in hiding. So that's interesting that you say that it wasn't directly said that he was in hiding, but it's speculated that he
Yeah.
was. And that's why all the tension was high with the bombings going on. Because me going into it as somebody who has not played the game, I was just like, okay, this is weird that we're starting at this point in time, and everyone seems to know that this thing is going to happen. Like, why do they know it's going to happen? But it was just like a little thing that I missed. That's why it's important to pay attention.
And another thing that I thought was interesting is because it's very like, 1950s duck and cover themed, but it's taking place in 2077. So um I'm kind of curious, and I hope we get a little bit more like backstory as to how we got there, at least now in the year 2024. Like what happens
Yeah.
in 50 years that brought us kind of almost back in time in a way.
So what I found out, I read like two different resources that one, they don't use fossil fuels, and that they actually use nuclear power to power everything. And because they don't use fossil fuels, their cars are electric. And that's probably why there's so much more like nuclear war that's prevalent because that's just the power that they've been using this whole time. I also saw in the other source that I saw said that they don't have a microprocessor, that was never created, and that's why like the TVs are so old timey and like kind of stuck in the 50s and that feeling. So because of those two different things, that's why they're, even though it's like set in the future, they look like they're in the past. So I thought that was interesting. So it's definitely an
And I
alternate
think that,
reality from what we have.
yeah. And I think it's something that was very well done in the
Mhm.
game as well as the show. Um, because you really are kind of questioning, like, is this the future? Obviously, with like the technology. But
Yeah.
even with like the costuming is very, 1950s Cold War era.
Yeah.
Um, and I almost like appreciate that in a way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually there's something about that time. I think it really it embodies that feeling of is there going to be war? Are we going to have a nuclear winter? And I feel like sometimes here we get that questionable, but it's a different feeling than what it was then. Because it was so, I guess, unknown. Um, and it was also limited media as well. Like they had to be glued to their TV to find out what's going on with the news, and everyone was just, I think they just sat around, not sat around, but like they gathered around to find out the news together. So it just embodying that feeling definitely like made this feel more real, in that sense. So yeah, I do
Have you
appreciate that.
ever watched the Duck and Cover video from the 1950s?
I don't, oh gosh. If I did it, I was a kid.
I didn't watch it in high school, but sometimes I'll just like watch it if I'm super bored. But basically it's Bert the Turtle, I think is his name, and
Oh
there's a
no.
song Duck and Cover, and they're basically it's from the 1950s. They're teaching you what to do in a nuclear if a nuclear bomb goes off. They're like, you
Hmm.
need to find shelter immediately. You need to get a newspaper and cover it over your face, like that type of stuff. Um,
Because that's gonna help us.
Yes. And then it's just, I really like seeing kind of some of those parallels in the show, like with the black and white TV, but then
Mhm.
also in future episodes where we see Cooper Howard, the actor, kind of filming this kind of like come to the vault video.
Mhm.
Um, and for those that play the game, when you turn on the game, it has like that preview playing of like, oh, hey, come to our Fallout shelter in case of nuclear war. So I think again, I think that's so interesting and very well done how they were kind of able to make it realistic, even though it is in the future and is a fictional show.
I think that's cool that they have those videos when you turn on the game. And I did read that there's quite a few Fallout games. Like the first two were actually in the 90s. Is that
I think
correct?
so, yeah.
Like
They
90s,
I think
2000.
Fallout 3 is the first more
Yeah.
modern game. I've only played Fallout 4, but then there's also Fallout New Vegas, which
Hmm.
my sister has played, so I've heard a little bit about that game. But yeah, I think the original Fallout game was very like two-dimensional,
Hmm.
um, kind of like a bird's eye view type of thing, rather than a lot of the first person views that you see in games today.
Yeah, and a lot of from what I've read, it said that it's like like a role-playing game. And then it wasn't until Fallout 3 that they decided to make it like an actual like action with still elements of role-playing, but more of an action game than what it was. Yeah. Yeah, so at the kid's birthday, we actually his daughter is staring off into the distance and starts seeing a plume of smoke. And she's like, Dad, is it bigger than my thumb? Is it supposed to be bigger than my thumb or your thumb? And he's just like, No, 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 that's a fire. It's fine. And then we start seeing more and more bombs drop. And then he hops on his horse and takes his daughter and just gallops away. And yeah, that is the beginning of the episode, which is just crazy.
I think again that was another thing they did really well to
Mhm.
really kind of suck you in. Because I was excited to watch it even as just a fan of the game, but just that opening scene, I was like, okay, this is gonna be good.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it was actually crazy because the next scene we're immediately jumped what 219 years later and in a completely different environment. We're now underground. We're in a vault with who we learned to be Lucy McLean. And I actually really liked the way that they did her intro because she sat there and she told us who she was as a way to present herself because she wanted to get married to somebody who was not her cousin.
Another line I really liked during that scene where she says, "My reproductive organs are all intact." And I'm like,
Yes.
I should start saying that on dates, and I will really
Right.
get their attention.
Is that what we're not doing? We should just
We got
just
to
start
start
asking
saying,
them, be like, how high is your first sperm count?
yeah, yeah. We'll be
Yes.
like, my reproductive organs are intact, and I'm most curious to know about your sperm count. Honestly, we should try it, see what happens.
Hey,
And
I mean,
maybe then the right one will come along and be like, that's from Fallout.
yes,
Like,
yeah.
yes, let's get drinks this weekend.
That would be great.
Yeah.
You try it first.
Okay.
Let me know how it goes.
Yeah.
And then I'll follow suit if it works out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from there we see like they agree to find her a breeder. They open up Vault 32 and let people in, and she sees who claims to be Monty come in, and Steph is just like, "You're lucky, you're so lucky." And then after that we quickly jump into like weddings, festivities, celebration between Vault 32 and Vault 33, and our bride and groom, Monty and Lucy, quickly go off to consummate their marriage. Like quite literally, she is just like, "Oh, okie dokie," and just
Yeah.
yeah, just goes along with
Like
it.
that's
Like, "Yep,
all it takes. Just oh, okie dokie.
okie dokie."
One thing that I actually missed the first time around, because I rewatched the first episode, like knowing what I know now, you really do kind of notice something off about the people of Vault 32. Like the way they're eating, like their hair isn't brushed, they're chugging water. So at first glance, I was kind of like it went right over my head. I noticed it after watching it again, and I'm like, that is, I think, again, very well done, having those like small hints of that behavior.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely picked up they did seem hostile. They seemed off to me. I didn't catch like the eating the food quickly or anything like that, but I did notice them being very hostile and to themselves and not like integrating themselves with Vault
Mhm.
33 very much. They weren't mingling very much. And you're like, when's the last time this door has been opened? Like, if we don't know who each other are, it's been a long time since this vault door has been opened. And we know that when Hank McLean came over, we know the door opened then, but that was before Lucy was even born. So it's, I guess, when Steph's door opened, that happened as well. But she was,
Well, they also said it was the triannual thing.
oh, so every 3 years. So you would think that they would know each other a little bit better and be able to recognize each other.
Yeah. But then something we like find out later in the series when Norman, her brother, is
Mhm.
that his name?
Yeah.
Um, I think he realizes that Vault 32 has been destroyed for two something years. So this
Mhm.
is something that's happened every 3 years. They probably didn't know.
It's just, I don't know. I have further comments, but that's later once we get to
Okay.
further episodes.
Getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say I did notice that like Monty, he had a lot of scars on him. I was like, that doesn't seem like somebody who's been living underground to have that
Yeah.
many scars. And then just the way I mean, he wiped himself off on the curtains, like after
Yeah.
they were done. I was like, that very much does not seem like somebody who lives with manners and courtesy. Um, and then I can't remember how does he come at her with a knife first, or does she hear
Um,
screaming?
she starts to hear like screaming
Okay,
in the background, and then she grabs her Pip Boy and it is detecting the radiation.
radiation. That's right.
And
Yeah.
then as someone who, has played the game, it was very exciting again when she goes Raiders. Because I'm like,
Mhm.
now we're getting somewhere. We are getting started with this TV show because I hate the Raiders in the game. They're so annoying and they're everywhere.
You mean the enemy in the game? The
Yeah.
person you're supposed to defeat? Is
Yeah.
an enemy? Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, that was great. And then we just start our pretty much our complete brawl at that point between 32 and 33. We see that Norm hides, but I mean Lucy helped him hide. I think both sides lost quite a bit of people. And at the end, Lucy's dad, Hank McLean, who is our overseer of Vault 33, ends up getting kidnapped by a woman named Moldaver. Yeah, so he pretty much like locks her in a freezer or something and then gets kidnapped by, or willingly goes with Moldaver. The raiders end up leaving the vault. Lucy ends up making the decision that she wants to rescue her father, and no one else wants to join in with her at all. They're like, no, we're vault dwellers. We're gonna stay in the
Yeah,
vault. This is our life. We're not
that's all we know.
we can't open that door. That radiation's gonna poison all of us. Like that kind of feelings. And so and we haven't seen any of the outside world yet. So in my brain, as somebody who doesn't know anything about the game, I was like, okay, yeah, like does she need that mask? Like how bad is it? Like I suspected they were lying, but to what degree though? Like how long can she sustain being outdoors near radiation? That kind of thing was going through my mind. So yeah, I was kind of like, oh, that she probably doesn't have the equipment to be outside in radioactive air, whatever. Next, we end up going to I believe they're called the Brotherhood of Steel. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Brotherhood.
The Brotherhood.
I
And
have
that's what
personal beef with the Brotherhood, but I won't spoil anything. That's all I'll say. I do not like the Brotherhood.
I mean, honestly, just from the show alone, I don't like the Brotherhood either. There's a lot of there's a lot of odd scenes in there. Just in general, just the things that they do just seems very I don't know, just very reminiscent of just like boot camps mixed with like all boys schools. It just didn't seem right. But this is where we meet Maximus. And they show that like he's definitely like picked on, beat up by the other people, by the other brothers. And we do see that he does have one friend, Dane. And Dane ends up getting picked to be a squire for a night. But the next morning, like we can see that Maximus is obviously sad, either because he wasn't picked or because Dane was picked and now he's on his own. Probably a combination of the two, to be honest. And so he's not celebrating with Dane that night. And then by the next morning, when Dane wakes up, he ends up with a razor blade in his boot and ends up too injured to join their night. So then Maximus is immediately the person in question, which is kind of rude. You're the one getting beaten up, that's your friend, and you're the one getting blamed for it.
Yeah.
Kind of sucks. Just beating him while he's down. But he ends up just giving just a huge speech about his just love and devotion to the Brotherhood and how they helped him. And so he ends up actually becoming the knight in place of Dane. So he gets assigned to Knight Titus. And as they're assigned, they were told to start looking for the scientist and his companion, which is a dog. And all we see is like a sketch of it. And then we jump over to pretty much the last scene of this episode. We see that drawing again. There's some bounty hunters, and they end up digging up this ghoul, who ends up being Cooper. Just 219 years in the future. He's a little worse for wear. To say the least. And
I love it though. I got a
yeah,
big crush on the ghoul.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. No, like when I was watching it, I was just kind of like, am I attracted to the ghoul? Because he would come on screen and I would be like I get all giddy.
I don't know. How do you feel about the Voldemort? I mean,
Oh,
is it a
Voldemort,
nose thing?
no.
I'm just asking, is it a nose thing? Like,
I don't know. I think it's a confidence thing,
okay,
honestly.
well, that's a different, yeah, I could be attracted to the confidence, but I'm not a physically, no, there's
I,
no,
I'd give it a try, you know? What's his
um,
sperm count? I don't know.
probably not good. He seems pretty radioactive, to be honest. I would not test those waters.
Maybe I would, but
Right, well, in 219 years, let me know. Or I guess it would be more than that. It'd be an extra 23 years. So yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and the school gets dug up and he ends up taking the bounty flyer for himself and pretty quickly kills the bounty hunter. So he shows us that he is quite strong and capable. And apparently your type of man.
Strong and capable. I
uh
also find it interesting how, he played a cowboy in all his movies and how that kind of made him this famous gunslinger in
mm,
in the future.
Yeah, because I mean, it's definitely as we see, like in the Wasteland, it's very much like the Wild West. Like, just
Mhm.
it goes. Were Western movies like in the 50s? I feel like they were, because that it
I think
feels
there
like
were
it fits that.
some.
I feel like it fits that theme of like, oh, the gold rush and
Mhm.
the 1950s, like just being out on the plains. Like it gives that vibe of there's no laws anymore. Like everyone's for themselves. And yeah, he definitely embodied the character and became the man from his movies. Yeah. So that's the first episode, which was a great first
Yeah.
episode. Good. Definitely brings us in with like all three characters that we're following throughout. And yeah, I thought it was great. I was like, okay, 7 more to go. All right. So then in the second episode, that's when we learn a little bit more about the scientist that's being, I guess, hunted, that everyone's sought after, Dr. Wilzig. I believe his name is. It's played by I just know him from Lost.
Me too. I
I
was like, not this guy again when he came on my screen.
I know the moment I saw him, I was like, he's not gonna be a good guy. Like, there's no way. Okay, Michael Emerson, that's his name. But yeah, no, the moment I saw him, I was like, don't trust him. Do not trust this man. But I was surprised he didn't last very long. So we learned a little about him and how he ends up with this companion. I guess I don't know. I don't really understand how he got away with the dog because like they showed us like where he hid the dog, but I feel like people would still know. It's not like dogs don't
Yeah.
bark. I don't know. That was a
Um,
little
that's
odd.
kind of another aspect from the game is you can have companions that follow you around too. And in Fallout 4, the first companion you get is a dog that
Mm,
looks just like C-104. Is that his
yeah,
name?
I
Yeah,
think so. That sounds right.
C-404. The dog,
The
basically.
dog.
We'll just call him CC. Um, so yeah, I thought that was just like another like nod to the game that I appreciated. And they can like hold things for you and like they hold all my nuclear weapons that I use to fight people. So
Dang,
shout out to the
okay.
dog.
Dang. Like, did hold it on his back or hold it on his mouth? I'm curious.
He has a little backpack,
Oh,
I
okay.
guess. I don't question it.
Yeah, so we get to learn about a little bit about him, when we see how he ends up like, I guess ex he doesn't really escape. He walks out of wherever he is. He's a scientist. He's doing something. He puts something into his brain, and then someone discovers the dog. The dog attacks that person, and next thing you know, everyone's looking for this guy. So he runs out and escapes, and we see Lucy. I think it's who we see next. She's looking for Moldaver. She's going around town being all sweet and innocent, being like, "Oh, can you help me? Can you show me directions?" She's learning quite quickly that being nice is not going to get her very far.
Mhm.
But she comes across Philly, spelled with an F, but she comes across that town and ends up going downtown, which is just what it's called. I don't know. She walks through some buildings and now she's downtown. And truly, I feel like this looks very Western saloon style, kind of just fights with but with machinery, which is in ghouls and other things, which is very interesting.
It's giving Diamond City Market for those who played Fallout 4.
What's that?
That's like the city market where you can like buy all your weapons, you can buy food
Mm.
there, kind of like a central for when you need supplies. And when she was kind of walking through some of those like stands where the guy has these magic elixirs, like another like nod to the story and to the game as well. Also in the game, if you're wearing your vault outfit, people will like make fun of you. So again, in the show, she's kind of being made fun of for wearing her outfit, and they're like, "Oh, you're a vault dweller," and they're like laughing at her, not taking her seriously. So yeah, another parallel.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised she stayed in that outfit for so
Yeah.
long, just because it's kind of like that makes you stand out. Like, don't you want to blend in just a little bit? But I guess she was just had, I guess that's just part of her ignorance, is
Yeah.
just being in it, being like, yeah, I'm a vault dweller. Like, I know the history. Like,
He's like,
we're
we're
gonna
trying to
repopulate the world.
repopulate and we're gonna rebuild.
Yeah, yeah. So she's just like, you guys should be excited that I'm here, just trying to find my dad. It's fine. We see also in the episode that like Maximus ends up, him and his knight end up very quickly get attacked by a mutant bear, and his knight is kind of a dick. and it keeps telling him it's his fault, where clearly it was not. And so he just kind of lets him die. It was kind of a him or me situation. Can't really blame him for that, but he totally
How
just was
shit get
like,
hit? Like,
yeah, yeah. And he takes over and starts pretending to be Knight Titus. From there, we see he also goes to Philly because he thinks that if he can find that scientist, find the target, that they'll still knight him and not kill him. So he goes after that, goes to Philly, where he ends up running into Lucy as well as the ghoul. So all three of our main characters are now in Philly, and they are also with the scientist. We see that Lucy's just trying to get more information about Moldaver. Maximus is trying to get Dr. Wilzig, and so is the ghoul. He's also trying to get Dr. Wilzig. So it's just kind of like Maximus and the ghoul end up fighting over Dr. Wilzig. During all that fighting, he gets injured. Lucy makes a deal with Dr. Wilzig so that he'll take her to Moldaver. He's
well,
injured. So they leave while the knight and the ghoul are battling it out and completely distracted. Dr. Wilzig ends up like, because he's injured, he can't make it very far, and he tells Lucy to take his head to Moldaver and to use it as a bargaining for her father.
when I was watching that, I was like, he can't be serious. Because he's like a very famous actor, like
Yeah,
known for Lost. I was like thinking he would have
a
a
bigger part.
bigger role. And
Hmm.
obviously his character does play a huge part in the story.
Yeah.
But I was just like, they can't kill him off already.
Yeah, it was like really quick. I was like, there's no way she's gonna
Yeah.
like, I was like, she's gonna like find some way to heal him, pick him up,
You
keep
can't do that.
going. And then he was just like, no, I already took plan D. Like, best thing Vault Tech ever came up with. I'm done, I'm out. And she's like, I can't take his whole body. So
Yeah. Okie dokie.
okie dokie.
I'll take your head.
And that's pretty much how episode 2 ends. I still can't believe she like took the head and she was just like, here's the head, and just walks around with it. It just gross. Talks to him too, which also like, how is she sure she cut in the, that was one of my thoughts. I was like, how do you know she cut in the right place and didn't like cut out the thing that they're looking for, or that it didn't fall out or something?
I don't know. Maybe it's not her first head she's severed.
But yeah, I have a feeling that's the first one she's ever severed. All right, so jumping to episode 3, Lucy very quickly loses the head to some weird ocelota mixed with the weird human finger creature mutant thing, which was so gross, in my opinion. So
And
very
that when I
gross.
would play the Fallout 4,
Yeah,
these mutant sea creatures, I swear I see a new one every time.
yeah.
They just get worse and worse and grosser and grosser.
Yeah, I feel like we only saw like, we saw this one a couple times,
Yeah.
but not just there, but also like in Vault 4, later in later
Mhm.
episodes, and it looked the same. So I was kind of like, y'all have the opportunity to make something like make another creature, but they just kind of made the same one. So I don't know if they just were just very close to where they were before, proximity wise, or if they just chose like, we're just gonna have the same monster creature.
We should
Um,
have another storyline of those two monsters coming together as lovers. I'm kidding.
oh,
Because there's like
yeah.
no romance, and that's fine. But normally they try to, a lot of shows try to like sneak in
I mean, there
some
was
sort of storyline. Well, I guess they did a little bit.
a little
Um,
bit. It just wasn't like a traditional
yeah.
romance, which it kind of it's fitting because it's fitting because both of them are very naive because of their
Yeah.
backgrounds. So it kind of makes sense that they weren't like, oh, I have to play hard to get. They were just like, want to move in with me? Like, want to have sex? Want to do this? And he's
That are
just like,
normal.
he's like, I don't.
Weird
But
things happen when I try to do that.
yeah, I have comments about that. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Okay, so jumping in or back to episode 3. Yeah, so she gets the head swallowed by a weird mutant creature because she left it too close to the water's edge. Jumping over to Maximus, we see that Maximus is ends up with a squire, a new squire, and it turns out to be his bully. So he has to stay in the suit, and I'm really hoping that he can eat and drink and go to the bathroom in that thing. Because if you're trying to hide from somebody, that's a hard one to do, especially if they're the one taking care of you.
I also thought it was interesting how the character, what's the bully's name?
Thaddeus.
Thaddeus. He's just a completely different person
Yes.
around who he thinks is, Knight Titus. He's like, "Oh, do you want me to rub your feet?" Like, "Well, I'm gonna refill your water." But like to Maximus, he's just a bully. So
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of funny. And then how it also was like another like realistic approach about how like people are just completely different to other people for whatever reason.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I like that Maximus was able to get him to open up and be like, tell me more about this, about the squire who died, referring to himself.
Oh yeah.
And he was just like, yeah, I feel bad because I was the one who got bullied. And so then when he showed up, I said, hey, let's bully him. And they all agreed, and I was popular. So I just went along with it. And it's just like, I mean, it's so true. That's what happens
Yeah.
like in real life.
I love Maximus prying for that information though. That's something I would do. So,
Oh, 100%. I would be like, tell me more. No, go
yeah.
into
I'm
details.
like, did
It's
you think she was
therapeutic.
pretty? Like,
Yeah. And I love that Thaddeus is just like, that's why I'm like, something about being like living on a farm. And he's like, that's why I'm so fat. I was like, what is this comment? Oh, it was like just the most random, funny, like, that was one thing about this show was like, even though like it was serious, post-apocalyptic, like fights, Wild West kind of thing, it was still kind of funny. Just like the little offhanded random comments that they made and gestures and things like that were just funny. So next we also Lucy's trying to figure out how to get the head back. She runs into the ghoul. Or I guess he found her because he's tracking the head. Lucy and the ghoul have a run-in. The ghoul actually ends up trying to use Lucy as bait to retrieve the head from the axolotl sea creature monster
he's
thingy
just
fingers.
misunderstood. He would never do that.
The ghoul or the
Not the ghoul I know.
axolotl?
He would never do that.
Well, Lucy thought she was being tortured, and then which I'm like, girl, you're overwhelmed. You're clearly being used as bait. I don't know. I guess that naivety
I
is.
did not pick up on that. So I guess I would be like, "You're drowning me."
I'd be like, sir, there's a creature in here. Please don't get me.
Yeah.
But it ends up being a failed attempt because he ends up losing all of his vials that we learn keep him, I guess, keep him human or as human as he can be. So all of those are destroyed. And so he ends up taking Lucy with him to go retrieve more. Next, we see we're still at the pond. Maximus, who's pretending to be Knight Titus, shows up with Thaddeus. Thaddeus ends up getting attacked by our fun friend, the sea creature. I honestly think that it died because it ate all those vials. I don't think they did anything to kill it. I think it just died because of that and it upturned its entire stomach.
I think that's an interesting thought.
I don't know. Did you think they did something to kill it?
Yeah, I thought that they just killed it. But in the game, those creatures are very hard to kill, at least for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's an interesting thought.
Because I mean, I only watched it the one time and I didn't like rewind this part or anything, but I didn't see them doing anything because Thaddeus was just, or sorry, Maximus was trying to pull Thaddeus out. He
Yeah.
wasn't really attacking the sea creature. So I was like, oh, maybe it just got sick from eating all those vials. Probably not meant for him, and it was a lot of them. And it like the way it upturned its stomach was kind of like, that's not something you do if someone like crushes your head. That's something you do when there's something wrong in your stomach and your body's trying to do everything it can to be okay. I might be wrong. Who knows? Someone tell me.
I think you might be a
Uh,
little right.
yeah, so the creature ends up just throwing everything up, including the head, and Thaddeus and Maximus end up very lucky just finding the head there.
Like a game of hot potato.
Yep.
Who's gonna have the head?
So then they take the head and celebrate, and then we move on to the next episode. In this episode, Lucy ends up getting sold by the ghoul so that he can get some more vials. This scene's very interesting. This episode reminds me of like, have you ever played Portal?
I have
Like
not.
one of the very few video games that I've ever played. I don't know, it might be Portals, not Portal. So like, sorry for people who are nitpicky, but I played Portals too. And just like they have like just like a robot that like runs the entire building that you're in. I want to say it's post-apocalyptic. It's been a while. It's been a while since I played this game. But like you're just like trying to escape and there's a robot after you essentially. It's that episode just reminded me of it because you're trying to escape this weird robot and she had no clue why she was there in the beginning, and then she gets very relaxed because he's like offering her like clothes gave her a new finger that the ghoul had cut
Yeah.
off, like stuff like that. And she's like, oh, okay. Which is interesting that he gave her a new finger. Just the as we find out, he's going to harvest her organs. So I was like,
Yeah.
what's the point of giving her a new finger if you're just gonna take everything apart?
Is making her trust him.
I guess so. I don't know. Someone tell me why. Because I'm very curious about that. And it also weirded me out a lot. I'm very curious how different their biology is, that they're able just to reattach just random other people's body parts and it works full functioning.
And she was perfectly fine with it too. She's like, yeah,
Yeah.
please put this dirty finger on my bottom half of my finger. Like,
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Like it could have disease, radiation, but yeah, stick it on me.
Yeah, I gotta know what the biology behind that is. I don't know what something about this alternate universe, using nuclear power makes them able to reattach body parts.
Yeah. I also I'm curious to know like how that's gonna play in like future episodes because while I think it was kind of like minor in this season, it's like, oh, like what does her having like a whole different top half of her finger like add to the story?
Yeah.
So I kind of hope that it comes back into play. Or like maybe it'll get shot off again or something.
I do think that is an interesting thought because there's, usually if something happens, there's a reason to it. You're right, like there wasn't much like play into it because both her and like she bites off the ghoul's finger, he cuts off hers. He's like, okay, eye for an eye, we're good. So then she gets a new finger and he sews her finger on. Uh,
Maybe the finger he found, oh, never mind. I was gonna say maybe that was the ghoul's old finger, but it's not because he just shot it off. Or she just shot it off.
oh, I think she bit it off.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I mean, it could have, I don't think it
It
was
came
his
from his
finger.
box of fingers. But
Oh,
what's
oh,
the
the
backs?
robot, the
Yeah.
robot.
What's the
Yeah.
backstory behind that finger?
Yeah. Like, is it gonna come to
Whose
life?
finger was that?
I honestly think that they just reattached their fingers, just so that they wouldn't have to green screen out fingers and noses. And then that way she has a trigger finger. I don't know which
Yeah,
hand it was, but yeah, probably just easier production wise.
you gotta do what you gotta do.
But maybe it'll come back and it'll be something cool, some cool story about the finger.
Like, oh, it's
Or them
Meryl Streep's finger.
maybe
Like,
her and the ghoul are connected now because he has her finger.
because no one will understand each other. Because like
Hmm.
how can someone who is missing a finger like relate, like besides to someone who also is missing a finger?
Yeah.
Like no one else knows that pain except for those people.
Yeah. And then the ghoul, I think he attached her finger to his nub.
Yeah.
So
He
I'm
likes her.
like,
He has a crush on her. That's
oh,
why.
100%. 100%. I'm kind of like, are they gonna end up together? Like Maximus, it's cute.
We can only
It's
hope.
like you want the bad boy. It's kind of like the newest Star Wars trilogy. You're like, oh, you want Rey to end up with the stormtrooper, but then there's a part of you you're like, but actually, the bad boy over there is looking kind of cute.
Kylo Ren, though.
Hello, come on, Ray, what you doing? Who you gonna choose? It's giving that a little bit. So she gets totally badass in this episode, defeats the robot essentially right before she gets just cut open with a saw, which is terrifying under no anesthetic. And she ends up escaping and comes across like the two guys who are in charge of this. I think they called it a body shop appropriately. And so she threatens them with, oh, I can't remember what she threatens them with. It's like some sort of something that would like burn them alive from the inside out. Something like that, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah. I feel like it's something like that. But yeah, so it's something that's like freaked them out. And so she was just like, oh, like let all these people free. And so they open up the doors and then there were like a couple doors that weren't open and they're like, lady, you don't understand. They're not people. And she's like, no, they're people. Let them free. Like they all deserve to be free. And immediately she gets everyone else killed and ends up being the last one standing. That was a stressful episode, but it was fun. And she ends up taking the vials and just leaving them for the ghoul outside and just walks away.
She's cashing in her karma.
So she walks away. In this episode, we see a little bit in the vault, in Vault 33, we see that Norm and her cousin Chet are, I believe that's this episode that they go into Vault 32 to see what had happened on the other side. To see
Then
if
that's
there's,
kind of when they discovered that it's been, abandoned and people have been
oh,
dead for over 2 years.
yeah, it like definitely was not the Raiders, and they clearly killed themselves,
So I'm
which
kind of wondering like how the Raiders discovered that that vault was open. Like, did someone play a part in Vault 32's demise and like they escaped and joined the Raiders? Was it just luck? I don't know. I kind of want, I would
yeah.
love to like find out more about Vault 32.
Yeah, I would too, because like there's so much, well, there's definitely a lot of unknown. Like, why would we all do a mass suicide? Like, why not chance the wasteland? Did anyone chance the wasteland instead of just sticking a fork into a toaster or whatever else they did? Because they were like, we know the truth, and it like, yes, it's shocking, but I don't think it's, that shocking to for that many people to die in that way.
Like the leaders know about this the whole time. And I think
Mhm.
that's something that Norman was becoming suspicious of and, is obviously not trusting the leaders
Yeah.
um, because we see that it quickly got cleaned up and solved and
Yeah.
like we're pretending like nothing ever happened.
So I am curious what we find out about the Vault 31. Was he aware? Like the overseer in Vault 31. Is he aware? And if he was aware, well, shouldn't he have told Vault 32? Like
Mm.
I feel like there's a lot unknown with Vault 32. So it'd be cool because they haven't renewed for a second season. It would be cool to see what happened there and why they
Well,
made the
was it
choices that they made.
the overseer in Vault 32 was like tied to the chair? Isn't that right?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe they revolted or something
Yeah.
and tried to leave and they wouldn't let them out. That's possible.
Yeah. So many
Interesting.
questions.
Yeah.
I
And then
can't wait to
also
find out more.
yeah, and also with like the if Vault 33, like their water was broken and they only have a couple more weeks of water, which is also a thing that never came back to. So that's something to touch on in season two. Did they run out? Did they run out of food and supplies or something along those lines in Vault 32?
Don't have to worry about that anymore because now Vault 33 is living happily in there. Like, what bodies? What murder? Like one of those types of things.
There was no one here. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they
Another
get
thing that I thought, was interesting or like a good like storyline was when Norm was looking through the votes of the
mm.
overseer and how every single one was like a vote of 31 to 33. Is that right?
I do know that all the ones from into 33 were from 31. I want to say there were a couple that said 32, but I would have to go back and rewatch it.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't have enough info on that because then they're like, oh, like by a unanimous vote,
Yeah.
this person was elected overseer.
Yeah.
But then
I
when I
I
saw
would
like, oh, the vote was 31 to 33, I was kind of like, oh, it's not unanimous. And I kind of got the idea of like obviously like are they like did she really win the election or did
yeah.
they just like decide like she was gonna be it no matter what?
Yeah, because there's a lot of people who aren't from or who are from 31 that aren't the overseer. So that like are they rigging it by having more people from Vault 31 being into each vault? I was definitely more focused on like when they were going through, I was looking at the names and then seeing that they were from Vault 31. I wasn't really seeing where they went to, but that is a good
Hmm.
point to
Maybe
see
that's
like
kind of what I was looking at.
but yeah, definitely in the next episode, in episode 5, that's when, they announce like, oh, we're gonna clean up Vault 32 and we're gonna show you guys it, see where you guys are gonna move into, or where some of you guys are gonna move into, which I still think was very odd that they sealed them off. I don't know
Yeah.
why they just don't have the vaults open and be like, hey, we got double the space. Like let's just make this an open back and forth. But for whatever reason they wanna
Yeah, and you could utilize
separate.
the space more in terms of like like farming,
Yeah.
they
And
could, do sort of trading or like supply,
yeah.
things like that.
And as we find out later when they're in Vault 4, each vault is something different. So I'm curious if they test different things
Hmm.
in Vault 32. Like, what were they testing? And clearly it was bad enough that everyone wanted to end their lives. I'm curious, like, maybe that's why they sealed them off and had to put more people in Vault 32 so they
Yeah.
can continue whatever research they're doing. In the episode 5, this is when Maximus, he's so smart. He decides to reveal himself to Thaddeus because that's going to go over well. And he steps on Thaddeus's foot first of all, which When he took his shoe off later.
Ouch.
I don't know how he got his sock back on after. I really
I think,
don't.
okay, a pattern I've noticed just now is
Yeah.
like the feet or like foot injuries because we have, the Brotherhood and the
Mhm.
Razor in the first episode.
Yeah.
The doctor with
Yeah.
whose head has been since decapitated,
Yeah.
his foot was shot off, and now this
Yeah.
person has a foot injury. I just noticed that pattern right now.
That is a lot of I guess that's the way to go. Like if you
Yeah.
want to injure someone enough but not directly kill them, their foot is the way to go in a wasteland.
Yeah.
Thaddeus ends up taking out what is it called? The
Fusion core.
fusion core. Thank you. He takes out the fusion core and leaves Maximus and his suit because he's an idiot and was like, "Hey, it's me, but we can be friends now. Like we did this cool thing and got the head and like we can make this okay now." And he's like, "Nah, dude. Like I'm for the Brotherhood. I'm gonna take the
I'm
head and leave
tattling.
you."
Another thing, like when I play the game, I have so many fusion cores. Every time I see a fusion core, I pick one up, but
Yeah,
I never use power armor. So I'm just like, why do I keep collecting these? But I just like having them. You
fair.
never
I mean,
know.
you never know. You could use them.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't use power armor, but when a mission requires me to, you
you
best
have
believe I
them.
have a fusion core for it.
The dog obviously follows Thaddeus, and I was very upset that he put the dog in a flippin' cooler, and I got very upset.
Yeah.
Like every time that they were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna leave the dog here. The dog might die," because I thought the dog died earlier, and then and he didn't die, and then later on they put him in the cooler, and I was like, "No one's gonna find this dog, and I'm gonna be so upset, and it's gonna be so sad." And I don't like it when shows kill animals, shows or movies. It's just not cool. Lucy comes across because she has a tracker in the head, and so she ends up coming across Maximus stuck in the suit, and they strike a deal that she will help him out as long and find the head with him as long as he gets the Brotherhood to help her get her dad back. I don't know. Part of me was like, I feel like he believes that he can get the Knights to believe him, but the other part of me is like, was he just lying about being able to expend other knights to help her just to find her dad? Like, I don't know that he would have been able to do that. So I'm like,
Yeah.
are you lying?
Like Thaddeus as a squire could not, but like
Yeah.
Titus may have that authority. And for
Yeah.
all that the Brotherhood knows, Maximus is Knight Titus.
True. Yeah. I guess if he had been able to stay in the suit, he may have been able to pull it off and been like, we need these knights to come get her dad. Yeah, it's true. So yeah, they strike up that deal. She gets him out of the suit. Yeah, so they come across two people on the other side of a bridge. And so then they like try to strike a deal with them, like, we'll just put our hands up and we'll just walk past each other. And of course it ends up in a shootout. Maximus and Lucy win. And but Maximus did get hit in his arm and he's like, oh, it's just a scratch. Of course, it never ends up being a scratch. It was more than that. And so they come across a hospital. And she's like, let's go in there and see if there's a med pack or something. And it's a trap. And they end up in Vault 4. So that's kind of how they leave off that episode with them. We do see more about Norm, and that's when he finds out that his mom's Pip-Boy was used to let the Raiders into Vault 32. And Betty officially announces, Betty, the overseer, our new overseer, announces their plan to repopulate Vault 32 because that's all they care about is procreation.
Especially if they're having sex with their cousins, like
Ooh, yeah, that was so awkward. And he's just like, "I love you," and she's like, "Yeah, I know. Everyone knows." Oh, that was. I guess it's a little bit more acceptable in a small community.
I guess.
Anyways, yeah. So in the next episode, we start back out with like Maximus and Lucy, and they find out they're in a vault, and Lucy's just like, "We're fine. We're good. We're in a
Like,
vault."
yay!
And I'm kind of like my thought was like, but you're exactly where you left off. Like you're back at start. Like you need to get back out of the vault,
Yeah. But
which
she's kind of like, oh, I'm in a place that's familiar. Like, it's
yeah,
okay. Like everyone in the vault is nice. Like we stand
yeah.
up to bullies and have sex with our cousins.
Yeah, I don't know. My thinking is like if your vault is so strict that no outsiders are allowed in and no one's allowed out, and you're an outsider who wants to get out, those are like the two biggest things that could be a problem. But yeah, she was just like, we're fine, we're safe, we're good. They're not gonna do anything to us because I'm a vault dweller as well, and
Yeah.
this is gonna be great. Their vault seems a lot bigger than Vault
Especially
33.
they have 12 floors.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like more like it's like going from like a Ramada to an Embassy Suites or something, like the
Yeah,
big ones with all the elevators on the inside. And uh that's kind of what it reminded me of a little bit. Because they did have like plants and stuff growing
yeah,
on the inside. Maximus obviously was skeptical in the beginning, but we see he ends up flipping because they like give him like a special suite and he's just sitting there in a robe, eating
like
popcorn,
this is
watching
not.
movies. Yeah, he's like, I don't have to fight. I don't have to do anything. I can
Yeah,
just sit here, put up my feet, watch TV. So he's just doing that, and then Lucy becomes more and more suspicious about them, mainly because their overseer has one eye. She's very fixated on that, like extremely. And she's like, "There's like no, like you can't
that's
be
not normal.
mutated if you are a Vault Dweller. No."
Yeah,
So she goes to like that weird ceremony, and then
yeah.
yeah, and then sneaks off to level 12, which she was told not to go to, where she sees what seems like a lab, like a weird, creepy lab where people are clearly doing experimentations on people, on first glance. And so she like someone comes walking in and she hides and then ends up throwing like, I don't know, a glass of acid onto a man's face and like fights all these people, causes all this commotion. She ends up getting caught. And before all of that happens, Lucy does learn a little bit about Shady Sands
Yeah.
and that town and how they had started living in a society again, a full city again. And she was like, why were we still all underground? So like that was the whole point of us, was that we would come up when everything's ready, but there was already a city.
Another
And
a part of that I thought made the timeline interesting, like as a viewer, because at one point we see like young Maximus coming out of a fridge, and we're like
yeah.
assuming it's after the bombs went off. And then, but then Maximus said, "Oh yeah, the bombs went off when I was a kid." And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, obviously Maximus is not 200 something years old.
Yeah.
Uh, Otherwise he'd be a ghoul like Howard. Um, and but then it kind of pans over to young Maximus seeing a man from the Brotherhood in the power armor suit. And so I was kind of like, how does that work? The bombs went off when he was a kid, but yet like the Brotherhood was not in existence in 2077. And then we like, kind of later find out about Shady Sands and that whole timeline.
Yeah. Yeah. It took me a while. I was also like very confused when it came to that because they kept being like, no, there was a war. There were bombs. I was there. Like you said, when like Maximus was saying that and
Because you
it
think when they say the war, they're talking about like, at least my first interpretation was the bombs in 2077.
yeah, which they call the Great War.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, no, same. That was my line of thinking as well. And I was very much I think it took me a while, like while she was like looking at the stuff about Shady Shore. Like Lucy came to the conclusion faster than I did on this one.
Same.
It definitely took me a while to put those together. Pretty much until she was explaining in further episodes about it. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's what was going on. That's why everyone was talking about two different bombs going off and stuff. But also, part of me was kind of convinced. I was like, maybe Maximus is that age because there were multiple people that were, as we find out,
Yeah.
alive still to this day, or 219 years
Yeah.
afterwards. So in the next episode, episode 7, we find out like Lucy's on trial because we know that she's gotten captured. Maximus sees that she's gotten captured, and he goes and steals their fusion core and hops in there in his suit and
He's
uh
late to the party.
very late to the party because as Lucy learns, those experimentations were actually to help undo mutations. So originally
Okay.
when they built the vault, they were doing experimentations on the people, which caused them to mutate. But once they like started welcoming like the people who were above ground and allowed them to come down into the vault with them, they started researching how to undo them, and undo all the effects that the original people who lived in the vault had done to them, which is crazy. So like the experimentations that she did see did happen, but they were trying to figure out how to undo all that stuff so that they could live and survive and undo what all the crazy rich people did to them
Yeah.
when they originally went down into the vaults. Yeah. So Lucy is told that she's being exiled. And she's like, "Oh, that's all?" And they're like, "Yeah, and we're gonna give you 2 weeks worth of food, but
And
that's
then
it. Don't
in
expect
comes
anything."
Maximus.
Yeah. In comes Maximus and just
I
destroys.
saw um a TikTok comment, so I can't take credit for this, but it was kind of like, I love how Maximus is like the super strength, low intelligence character. How kind of when we talked about, your character settings that you can do when you create, when you start the game,
Mm,
they're
yeah.
like, Maximus is the character that you make super strong, but like is
Just not
dumb as a
there.
box of crayons. Like, then
Oh
like,
my
oh,
God.
they're letting me go. He's just like, they are?
Yeah.
And like they're like, yay, problem solved. And then he comes in like with his sword and is ready to fight.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it reminds me of like Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Just comes in swinging, starts stabbing people, and they're like, "What are you doing? Like, you didn't have to kill any of these people." So they both end up getting exiled. But luckily Lucy does convinces Maximus to return their fusion core so that they don't lose power in like what 2 weeks or something. So he has to leave his suit behind. And they kind of have a sweet moment where they're like, "Oh, you should move into the vault with me once we find my dad." He's just like, "Actually, I've been lying to you this whole time. My name's Maximus, not
Yeah.
Knight Titus." And she's just like, "That's fine. Like, I've seen what this world does. It's
Okie
okay."
dokie.
But
Yes.
yeah, like,
It is what it is.
yeah. And then, I think this is where they kiss. And it's like also so wholesome.
Mhm.
Oh, I totally glossed over the whole important part in episode 6, where she's just sitting there like, "You want to do it?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Do
Happily.
what?"
You want to have sex? And he's just like, no, because it makes like my penis gets all weird. And she's
And
just like,
it
that's why
explodes.
it's the low intelligence, super strength character.
Yeah, my only confusing part about that is definitely when they introduced the Brotherhood, there was someone definitely masturbating in one of
Yeah.
those scenes. And I was like,
I was like, how would he not? I mean, I guess if he was being bullied, maybe he's not hanging out with these people,
I guess not. Maybe they
not
lied to
circle
him.
jerking with them. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they just lied to him. And, and that was part of the
Oh
bullying.
yeah, they're like, no, like that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, that's wrong.
Honestly, love Lucy's confidence. Just like, do you want to do it?
Yeah, she was just like, yeah. Well, because I'm sure no one's ever told her no before. Or like
Yeah,
when they do, it's just like, "Oh, this is just part of how it
yeah,
is. It is what it
reproduction,
is." Yeah,
you gotta repopulate.
yeah. Which I'm kind of like, did she was married, so like hasn't been that
He
long.
still is married. Nope, he's dead till death do us
He's
part.
dead. Yeah,
R.I.P.
yeah. But like, I mean, she could end up pregnant.
Yeah,
Only takes one time.
yeah.
So we start to see Thaddeus, and he comes across the guy who likes to screw chickens. And he tells him like, "Oh yeah, like I can help you with your leg." And so they trade the fusion core for some weird serum, and he drinks it like an idiot, but it heals his leg. So he ends up coming across somebody that he can like radio the Brotherhood, and he radios them and says like, "Hey, I have a head, like come pick me up." Um,
Or Fred Armisen.
what?
Fred Armisen is there.
Oh, was that who was in
It's
the
the actor.
house with the
Yeah.
oh yeah, so they're there, and then Lucy and Maximus come walking up, and they find him, and immediately Thaddeus gets steps on a little trigger and gets a arrow to the neck. And when I tell you my jaw dropped, I was like, "Oh, oh."
But then like the comedic timing of like, why am I not dying?
Yeah. I know. I was like, wait, what's happening?
Well, because my first thought was like, it's because he's like plugged up, when they say like
Yeah.
you don't take out the knife when you've been stabbed because you're gonna bleed out. And I was like, don't take the arrow out, you're gonna bleed out.
Yeah. Even Lucy
Like
was
he
like,
does and
maybe
he doesn't
don't do
bleed.
that.
And then we find out that he is also now a ghoul.
Yep. Because of
Hopefully
whatever
he'll
he
be just
drank,
as cute.
one can hope.
We can only hope.
And so he starts freaking out because the Brotherhood's on their way, and he's like they're gonna kill me if they find out that I'm a ghoul. And so Maximus is like, I'll cover for you. You run, like I'll take the head, you go. So he gives the head to Lucy, takes another random head that happens to be there, smashes it in so no one can recognize it, and brings it to the Brotherhood. Lucy takes
Then they
off.
can.
Is that when they kiss?
Yeah, or like before they go their
Or
separate ways.
yeah. And they're like, come find me. And so Maximus goes to the Brotherhood, and
I think that's the end of
uh
the episode.
the ghoul saves the dog, which makes me happy. I had to mention that. He takes the dog out of the thing so that he can follow him to the dog or to the head. The only other thing that happens in that episode is Norm gets into Vault 31. That's how the episode ends, is when he
Yes.
walks into it and he's like, hello, someone there? Because he pretends to be Betty and says, like, I can't be here anymore. You gotta help me. I'm
Yeah, and then
compromised.
that's when Vault 31 is just like, or Norm tells Vault 31 overseer like, oh, like things aren't going according to plan.
Hmm.
Whatever
Yeah.
that means.
Yeah.
Obviously, something shady with Vault 31 because they're like, okay, you need to come over here ASAP.
So he does, and then walks in, and then the episode ends. So then we have our last and final episode. This one had a lot in it. So in the first part, we were flashing back to 2077, and Cooper finds out that his wife is like fully involved with Vault-Tec. Like we saw it throughout all the other episodes that like she seemed a little shady because he's just like, why are we really doing this? Like, I don't need to be spending
Yeah.
my time doing these commercials. Like, let's go live on a ranch, which clearly he does eventually, because he ends up with the horse before the bombings. And so,
And another like kind of telling line was when, they're looking at vaults to like buy their spot in,
mhm,
and Howard is like why does it matter what vault? Why do we need a vault? And then his wife was like, well, we should at least get a nice one or like one of the good vaults, something like along those lines.
yeah, oh yeah, I know. And of course, it's like unveiled that pretty much all these people are deciding what's going to happen. Like they're buying vault systems and then becoming the overseers so they can do whatever they want in each one to see which society is going to last, which one's going to be the better one. And
And like,
uh
how do we get people to actually go in here? And it's like, well, we're gonna shoot off the bombs.
yep, we're going to be the ones to do it, which
And although they don't really show him like kind of confronting his wife, do they? They
they
don't show that. I don't remember.
they don't.
They don't, yeah. Good. But also, in the beginning of the series, episode one, they're talking to like this famous actor has to do child's birthday parties
Mhm.
because he has to be paying alimony every month.
Yeah.
So it's like because I rewatched the first episode after finishing the series and I caught that line and I was like,
Mhm.
okay, it's because they clearly got divorced. He wants no involvement with his wife, and now
Yeah.
he has to pay her all this alimony. So now he's doing children's birthday parties.
Hmm. And like also like just him having a horse alone. Because that was one thing that he said to her. He's like, I want to be on a ranch and I want to have horses and stuff like that. And she's like, why would you want that?
When we can have a
Um,
nice vault.
yeah. When we can have a nice boat or live in the hills or whatever in LA. And like she clearly did not want to give up what she had. And anyway. And yeah, so they went their separate ways for sure. And we clearly find out why, because she's part of this horrible organization. She
And that's when we also find out because in earlier episodes, when Lucy McLean meets
Mhm.
the ghoul says McLean, like, oh, like he's like that name rings a bell, or he's hinting like, oh, like the McLeans, and you're kind of like, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
And then we find out that her dad was complicit in this,
He was
in the fallout.
we find out that Hank McLean was one of the many people who bought a vault back 219 years prior, which
And he
has me
looks great for his
questioning.
age.
I know. So that's the one thing that's bothering me. So as we see in this episode, we see Norm go into Vault 31 and we find out that like they've been pretty much preserving everyone, including Hank and like Betty and all the other overseers. So like they've all been preserved and we see them in the flashback in 2077 around those tables. We see Hank, we actually see Moldaver, which I'm curious how she looks so good.
Moisturizing, sunscreen.
Yes, she stayed out of the sun for as
Yeah.
long as possible. Yeah, so we see like a lot of the same characters, and then I'm pretty sure, and then we see a little brain in a car. Tiny
And I
little,
liked that because that is a character, like at least it's a species in the
oh,
Fallout game series.
it's a species.
Or
'Cause
it's like they're like their own little group. Like there's more than one of them.
oh, interesting. Because I was curious. I was wondering if he was Bud Askins because he was the one, that he kept going around to Cooper and being like, "Hey, I wanted to tell you something." Like he was the one who kept going up and bothering him, and he's like, "I'm Bud Askins of something something Askins," and
So
I'm
I
pretty.
actually saw a YouTube video.
Mhm.
Um and so he is the voice of the Mr. Handy robots. So at the body shop, there's the Mr. Handy.
Yeah,
Um I'm pretty sure like his voice because he was like, "Oh, I want to be a voice actor." Things like that. I'm pretty sure he is the voice of the Mr. Handy. So he might be the voice of
I thought that
that
was
as well.
his friend though, because remember they had a party at his house, and he was talking to he was like, "Oh, you're my only friend who showed up," and then he said that he sold his voice,
But not
and
the
he
same person.
no,
Oh,
not the same person as, but no, I don't believe so. Let me see if
but
I
no,
can.
whoever sold their voice, that's who's the voice of Mr. Handy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that because they
Ignore
were
me. I don't
like
know what I'm talking about.
he asked for a raise and they're like, "Oh, we'll throw in a Mr. Handy for you." And he's like, "Why?" He realized later on, like, "Why would I want someone with my voice
Yeah.
welcoming me every day?" It's actually kind of funny when Norm went into that vault because he was just like, "Wait, I'm gonna stick you with this." And he just keeps walking. He's like, "Wait, wait, no, just stand still so I can
I
get
know.
you." But I am like curious, like, do they just I didn't know if you would have an answer about that, like with the people being like preserved or something? Do they just take them down when they're ready to use them? Like was
I'm
it?
not entirely sure. At least in Fallout 4, they have a little bit of a different premise.
Mhm.
I hope that in like season two or future episodes,
Yeah,
can we get like more of a backstory of the different vaults? We've kind of touched on that already, but because like every vault has their own like different thing that they're doing, I just want to see a lot of different vaults and how they're different. And like,
yeah.
are there any genuine vaults? Like, is every single one shady? Like, did Vault 32 figure things out and that's why they're all dead? Like,
I know, I'm curious too. It would be really cool to like explore more vaults and
yeah,
like because that would be be a fun second show if they want to
yeah,
do a spinoff. Or even like how Walking Dead used to do like the little TV series like mini
mhm,
series
yeah.
online. Be cool to do something like that. Just so that we can see like inside certain vaults. The only other thing I could think is that like maybe they like preserve them until they're ready to mate them with somebody or like need a new overseer, so they like
Yeah.
send them over or something. And so,
How much did that cost?
right,
Is
just
is one of them the president in the year 2077 and that's where they went missing to? I don't know.
possibly. Oh yeah, oh, the president's definitely in a vault. Are you kidding me?
One of the
Uh,
nice vaults, probably.
oh yeah,
But then, like,
definitely.
is he still president? Like, is he gonna come out of the vault or like in the vault that he's
It
in?
just takes over.
He's just like, well, I'm the president. And I'm just like, okay, but this is not the United States. This is a vault. Like,
Yeah,
so many questions.
I would not want to be the president over a country that has been nuked.
And
I
he's
would,
like, I'm not the president.
yeah, I'd be like, no,
I'm
I just look like him. It's been
yeah,
219
that's
years. I'm
that's
not
my
him.
twin brother or sister.
My great 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 grandfather.
Yeah.
Like, no, not me. Finally see Lucy finds Moldaver and finds her dad, brings the head, and Moldaver's like, yeah, sure, I'll let your dad go, but let me just ask you a few things real quick. Let me just tell you a little bit about your dad. Like, you're curious about where he took him, right? Like, you want to know. And so she like goes into the backstory about how her mom and her brother all lived in Shady Sands,
Yeah.
and that it was her dad who in fact took them and then completely just leveled Sadie Sands. Um,
then that's when Maximus is like, the bombs went off when I was a kid. And then that's kind of when I put those pieces together.
Yeah, yeah, that's when I put that together too. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. So she's like processing that information and then like she's asking like, well, what happened to my mom? And she's like, I think you know. Which to be completely honest, if it wasn't for the camera panning over to the ghoul sitting at the table, I would not have assumed that at all. Like that
I
never
probably wouldn't
crossed
have
my
even
mind.
noticed that
Yeah,
she's there.
I know. I would have been like, you just have a ghoul chained there ready to go come after me. Like that's my thinking. I would have been like, so she died. Like I would just assume she died from the bombs.
Do
But
they explain in the show what happened to Lucy's mom? Like what was told to her?
I don't think so. I think they just say that she died.
Yeah,
That's a good question. I don't think they ever said. I think they just said that
yeah,
she died, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, like Betty was just like me, and your dad buried her," which clearly is a lie
yeah.
because she was there. Yeah. So while she's like processing everything, the Brotherhood shows up. Maximus shows up with the entire Brotherhood, being like, "Lucy's in trouble." Once again, kind of wrong, coming in guns a-blazing. And so the Raiders start fighting the Brotherhood, which I actually kind of like this scene, like because it was like they were doing like the light and the dark contrast of like when they were like shooting and stuff like that, which I thought was really cool. Yeah, so while they're doing that, we like her dad's trying to like convince her to let him out and everything. And Maximus, we see the ghoul shows up and starts fighting everyone essentially to work his way.
Because he's still looking for the head.
He's still looking for the head. Yeah, he's still trying to get to the head. As we find out, he wants to find out where his daughter is. He wants to
Yeah.
find his ex-wife and his daughter.
And that's why I'm like, yes, a family man right there. He's like, where's my family?
Yeah, except I
That's
don't
my
think he
man.
wants his wife. I think he just wants his daughter, which also, how old is she? What does she
Yeah.
look like at this point? Yeah.
Is she also a ghoul? Was
So
she
many,
preserved?
yeah, so many questions about that.
You would think that his wife would have made arrangements for her daughter.
Yeah.
Unless, she's just a horrible person, which, yes, she is.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like she would have done something.
I'm also curious, like, so clearly, if he doesn't know what vault she's in, that means he was never there when she went into the vault. So he was just left out there in the wastelands. And where did like he had his daughter when the bomb started going down. So I
Yeah.
want to know what happened between when he hopped on the horse with his daughter and when she got into the vault because there clearly he did not have her.
Yeah, future seasons and episodes, we get
Yeah,
to find out more.
I agree. Yeah, because that would
'Cause I
be
love that storyline of the
yeah,
ghoul and his family. Because, he's also the face of Alt Tech.
yeah, yeah. Which when I found that out, I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like when
Yeah.
they did the commercial and everything, I was like, he's the guy on all the posters.
No,
Um,
he's the thumbs up guy.
yes. So yeah, I thought that was really cool, and I hope they explore that more in the next season. I think Maximus is the first one that finds Lucy and immediately lets her dad out while she's still standing there in
He's
shock.
just an idiot. I
He
mean, he
is.
was just like, oh yeah, Lucy wants to find her dad. Here he is. Yay.
Yay,
Like,
yeah, let me help. Let
but
me
then,
get him
as
out.
a viewer, you're like, Maximus, you idiot.
And then he hops out of his suit. Like you're in the middle of a battle and you're just gonna hop out of
Okay,
your suit.
I tend to do that in my battles in the game. I'm like, I can't move around in this thing. So then that's why I don't wear them. So I get out and then I have my cute little dress I wear and I shoot my little gun. Like, I guess I'm Maximus playing the game.
Lucy's breaking the news to Maximus, like, it was my dad. He was the one who bombed
Yeah.
Shady Sands. Hank ends up taking Maximus's suit, and I'm just kind of like, okay. That happened. He's just gonna go full Terminator here and just
And
be
just
like,
abandon his daughter.
mm-hmm.
He
Yeah.
clearly doesn't give a shit about.
I know he was like, you're my whole world, but now I'm just gonna leave you here.
Like,
Like
but
I
actually, like, I gotta save my own ass.
yeah, I thought he would have like kidnapped her or something. Like he's in this big, huge suit. Why not just grab her and run
Yeah. You can
if she's your
fly in the
home?
suit. Like,
Yeah, but yeah, he just does the ghoul show up before he dips? He does,
I think he
yeah.
comes. Yeah.
The ghoul shows up. Maximus gets knocked
Yeah,
out
because he
by
asked where
Hank.
his family is.
Yeah, Maximus gets knocked out by Hank, and then yeah, the ghoul's asking about his family, and Hank just jumps out the window, or the big opening in the in the building. And so now it's just Lucy and the ghoul, and the ghoul's like, "Well, you coming with or what? Like, are you joining me?"
He has such a big heart. He cares so much about her.
Yeah, so much. I think he just wanted someone. Well, no,
He's
I think he.
lonely. He's so sensitive. I'm trying to sell him to you.
I
Make
see
my
that. I
crush
see that.
justified.
But are you sure you want me to also crush on him? Because you don't want
I
us to
will get
both be
jealous.
fighting over him. Yeah, so I mean, he definitely has a soft spot for her. And I'm sure it's because he has a daughter. And
Yeah.
so it's like that daughterly figure kind of thing. And she just kind of lost her dad in a sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Okie dokie.
so yeah, so she shoots her mom and then just like tells Maximus while he's passed out, like, come find me. And follows the ghoul out the building, side of the building.
Yeah.
Yeah. We see Maximus wakes up and Moldaver comes in and initiates cold fusion. So she just turns all the power back on for Shady Sands and it just starts lighting up. And like she just sits down next to Maximus and she like asks him like, what do you think the Brotherhood will do with unlimited power? And then she dies and Dane comes in and was like, you killed her. And he's like, no, I didn't. And Dane's like, oh hail
Yeah.
Knight
Our
Maximus,
hero.
our hero. Yeah, so it's kind of where we're left off. Norm is locked forever in Vault 31. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so we're left off. Lucy went with the ghoul. Hank's on the run. Maximus is now a knight in the Brotherhood
He
and
got what he
a
wanted.
praised one. And Norm has a decision as to whether he wants to just hop in one of those pods and sleep until he gets woken up or die in Vault 31.
And I did not play Fallout New Vegas, but
Hmm.
I think the last scene is where we see Hank like going to this city, and I believe that city is New Vegas. So I
Okay.
love how it like opens up for another season, which is what
Yes.
we want. And then
Yes.
also like for people who like are familiar with the game, I had to look it up and see that it was New Vegas, but I've heard
Yeah.
of the game New Vegas. So when I was like, it's New Vegas, I was like, yes, like maybe then we'll get to
Yeah.
Fallout 3, then we'll get to like Fallout 4, which is the game that I'm more familiar with. So then I can see some of those storylines be um
Yeah.
kind of be written into the show. But I think that the first season was, so well made and well
Hmm.
crafted that it is really opens up to a whole bunch of other storylines, like new ones as well as ones in the game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, honestly, I think Amazon really like hit this out of the park with this show. Because I mean, as someone who has not played the game, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really, really did. And I even got my dad to watch it, and he called me. He was like, "It was so good." I was like, "Yeah, I know, I know."
I liked seeing like
Um,
some of the Easter eggs. Like there would be like Nuka-Cola
hmm.
machines in the background. And
Yeah.
in Fallout 4, you can go to Nuka World, which is the
Oh.
Nuka-Cola amusement park. And they have all these rides and they have a zoo. And I'm like, it's Nuka-Cola, it's Nuka
Oh.
World.
I want
Um,
to see that in season two.
that would be like a great addition to the show.
Yeah.
I kind of, me personally, I hope that we don't get until like Fallout 4 until like season 4. Just because I feel like I don't know. Or maybe season 2. I guess
Yeah.
I guess I don't know what I want, but
Yeah.
I also like when Lucy first gets stabbed in episode 1 and
Mhm.
she grabs the med kit and she pulls out a sim pack. I was like,
Yeah.
that's a sim pack. And then she stabbed it. I'm like, that is just like the game. And then when one of the raiders like took like an inhaler type of thing, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that is a jet. I've used those before in the game. So it was just, I really liked seeing those little Easter eggs and like knowing what those were.
Like there's definitely stuff like I noticed all the Nuka-Cola and I was like, that's gotta be something in the game.
It
Because
is, yeah. And there's all those
yeah.
different types of sodas you can drink. Like some of them give you health, some of them give you like extra health, some of them make you be able to carry more things. Like,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
Luca Cole is like is a fun, just like a fun little thing in the game.
Yeah. It definitely makes me wanna, it wants me to get into the game a little bit, but it's also like, where do I start? Especially as someone who watched the show, like what's a
Yeah.
good place to start? But yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I would probably give this show like eight and a half
I'd
out
say
of
it's
10
eight,
stars.
8 or 9 out of 10, depending
Yeah.
on like how excited I get talking about it. Like obviously, like right now, I'm like, this is a 10 out of 10 show because we really like dove deep into it, and
Yeah.
like you had some things I hadn't thought about or things that I like missed in the show. So I
Yep.
was like, well, that like just makes it 10 times better.
Well, thanks for joining us, Bailey, and talking about Fallout.
Yeah, thanks for having me. When season 2 drops, I'll be back.
Okay, guys. Well, thanks for listening to the dive in. Please like and subscribe if you want to hear more. Like, I want to see why he got buried in that cemetery. I don't know why I said it like that. Buried.